Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are glad to present something kind of new and unique for today's webinar. We're actually going to focus on home performance contractors, and we've got two of the best on the line today. We're kind of doing an interview process, so we really think that this is actually a very informative way to communicate some of the things that are happening in the real world with the people that are doing it. So our goal is to try and come up with some new features and options with webinars. So this is one of them. And over the next couple of months, we've also are combining the same concept with efficiency first to do some of the same things with some of the same people and some others. So we appreciate your time today. All right, so this is my clue to record. So this is when we actually begin the recording, and that's one of our guest speakers today, Rob Minnick, in front of his one of their vans. And there is a lot of great stuff on the Retrotec website. We actually have some handouts that are in your control panel. You can actually just grab those and pull those directly off. A lot of the information you're looking for is on there, including how to register for the webinars or other events we have. The support, we are really trying to update our FAQ page, which is facts you may be looking for if you can't get a hold of technical support or it's off hours. And there's all the kind of manuals and guides that are out there. So some of these slides are familiar, but we want to make sure we really kind of stress them each week. So, we appreciate those of you who are always familiar with this stuff and see it, that there are those who don't actually. So I must remind people that if you have a DM32, the smart gauge, that it does actually have a firmware that needs to get updated regularly. If you do call in for technical support, that's the first thing they ask is, what's your firmware? And you can see that actually as soon as you open up your gauge on the front screen. You can also see it at the very bottom of the first home screen that shows up. But once you do a test, it doesn't stay there. So you can always go to settings and toggle your way through a couple of screens, and it shows up on the actual last page there on the screen. So you also can get information about calibration and other stuff on that last screen that's there. So there it is. This is build 2.4, 71B1. And if your gauge does not say that, then you can download and open the configurator and update it with a USB cable. You can't use it with the Ethernet. You must use a USB. The best thing to do is open up the configurator, have the gauge off, plug it in. It comes on, and it's usually found and tells you if you need to update it. You can download the configurator on Retrotec's site. And I stress this because it's the most common thing that people aren't really always keeping up with is the gauge and all of the settings that are on there. So it's very straightforward, guides you through like any other kind of software that you may do in terms of updating it. We also get many questions during the webinar, so I try and keep these slides in, that the DM32 does control the TEC fans, and there is an adapter that you can actually get to do that, and basically it replaces the DG700, and you can control any of the devices that Energy Conservatory offers. And there's an upgrade that you can also get. Again, you can trade in your DM2 or DG700 for a certain amount of money and upgrade to the DM32 Smart Gauge. It's a non-Wi-Fi model. So a lot of people take advantage of that, and it's been a major success for a lot of people in the industry. This is some really exciting news that we want to make sure we let people know about, that our cloud is going to beta within a matter of maybe next week, if not probably for sure the week after. So what that means is that all of you who go to retrotec.com, our cloud, can actually sign up for information. Many of you have done that. Over almost 500 people have been wanting to know what's going on with the R Cloud. So those of you that have signed up on that site will be able to become our first beta testers. So you'll be receiving an email with a link that you can download this. It works only on a Windows tablet or a Windows device, which means a PC. We will have Android and Apple coming right behind them, but if you want to see what our cloud looks like, make sure you go to retrotec.com, our cloud, and sign up for the release notes, and you'll be included in our beta versions. All right, today we're going to hear from our experts on many of these topics that we've got. So, they include, home performance versus audits, lessons of success, different types of equipment. We're going to talk about how to communicate with homeowners. That's one of the greatest challenge with our industry. Many of them, that you're trying to explain what you think is a problem, what they think may be actually a challenge, and some of the pressure imbalances or some of the safety things that should always be included in some of our assessments. So today in the background, I have Jeremy Begley, who is the owner of HVAC to Home Performance. Jeremy is a good friend. I presented with him in several locations around the country, and we'll be doing so at the Midwest Energy Conference coming up in a couple of months. And the other one is a legend in our industry. If you do not know these guys, I highly encourage you to go out of your way to find them at the conferences or see them places that they're speaking, or get in contact with them, because one of the things that they do is they really reach out and want to help others be successful in home performance. And Rob Minnick has really dedicated most of his life to doing that. It has lots of things that he has created to do that. So whenever I see Rob on the venue at a conference, I make sure I try and get in his room and see what he's talking about. I do want to give some details about who these guys are so you understand their background. Jeremy was a founder of Home Performance and energy efficiency evaluations in Cincinnati and greater Cincinnati area. He now has broadened his scope to actually realize that he does better off consulting other HVAC companies that are considering to do this. So he actually left his regular day job and launched his own consulting practice just back in November. So he is a perfect person to try and get information from about how to become a home performance contractor with whatever background you may have, being an auditor or HVAC contractor. Both these guys are very involved in ACA and HERS raters and home performance professionals. So many of them have the similar background that a lot of the folks do on the site here also. I presented with Jeremy. Sometimes he's not there. And this is one of the slides that I've used to kind of explain Jeremy's impact, or what a home performance contractor can do for an HVAC contractor. And these numbers are pretty staggering. So Jeremy was an auditor, and the ERA funding kind of stopped, and he really was looking for a stable gig. So he hooked up with an HVAC contractor, as many auditors really should think about doing as a good partnership. Within the first 6 months, they added $250,000 to their revenue based upon home performance and energy auditor types of assessments. So it was a major asset. He clearly paid for his salary, and I'm sure he wished that he probably was figured out a way to do that on his own. So he now wants to help other folks do this same concept and reach those kind of numbers. Rob is one of the leading people in this, has been doing it forever. In fact, he's in a family business. So Rob's one of the few people that probably grew up as HVAC kid and home performance kid, and has seen the industry change in more ways than most of us really never paid attention to. So again, these guys are really attached to ACA, BPI, and ResNet, and I intentionally let his credentials run off the page because that's the kind of stuff that he's been involved with. I do want these guys to kind of introduce themselves briefly. So, Rob, can you kind of explain, your family kind of history and some of the other things you've actually done as establish yourself with the home performance industry?
Sure, not a problem. I don't want to take up a lot of time. I'm going to be brief just because time is of the essence. And because there's been here so long, I could talk about it very long, can really bore you. So as you see here, my grandfather started the business, and then as soon as I was old enough to grab a broom, they put me to work. And then I just grew up in the industry, and I wanted to start at the bottom. I started in our sheet metal shop. We used to have 100 and something employees. We did a lot of tract homes throughout the state of Maryland, Northern Virginia, and DC. And it was just really huge as a kid coming in, and very fortunate that the grandfather started the business and had no idea, just knew there was a lot of moving parts, had no idea what's going on, just wanted to learn it from the ground up. Started in the sheet metal shop, grew up in the sheet metal shop, worked my way up in the sheet metal shop to actually doing layout, which is actually, when someone draws up sheet metal fittings to be put in the home, how do you take a flat piece of metal and make it into the product that you need? And then I ended up running the sheet metal shop for many years, got out in the field for a little bit, then got pulled back into the sheet metal shop. So that's what really kind of started driving me to understanding the mechanics design process of how do the people out in the field know how to design this correctly. And that's when computers started coming out, because that was late 80s, early 90s, and really started figuring out Manual J, and trying to get everyone else on board with that, and then got into how to test duct systems through National Comfort Institute, learned a lot there, and then started getting into year 2000, and then started the Green Talk was out there, and then that's when I started diving into home performance and jumped in completely and went and got every certification and knew that this is what it was all about, especially as an HVAC contractor, understanding that the house is the system, and if the HVAC equipment and the duct system are teamed up with a house that's performing well, then you're going to end up with a great product, and it proves itself every day. And here we are today.
Can you briefly explain what is your university and foundation?
Sure. So then when I've learned all this, I wanted to share it with others. So then we created Minnick University, and I do quite a bit of training internally as well as externally, nights and weekends, BPI training, duct training, how to do a correct manual D, how to do manual J's. We actually have 2 test houses on site that we can go into and actually, test home performance, HVAC, anything and everything on the home performance and HVAC side. And Minnicks Foundation we created as we wanted to start giving back. We have the Maryland Apprenticeship Program here and BPI training. We're a test house and a test center. And so we were at the colleges giving out free training, and they had to apply for it. And to this day, I still do it. And I still have not received one application.
Wow. Well, maybe you will after today. All right, Jeremy, I would like to hear your voice out there. Can you kind of give us an overview about what it is you're trying to do with your new consulting company and why you decided to basically leave your day job and go do something that actually could take you to another level?
Sure. Well, as your little slide there says, for the first 5 years that I was in this industry, starting in 2009, I operated the first actual home performance contracting company in the greater Cincinnati market. I got into this industry as a student of Cincinnati State, which is a local community college. I ended up being one of the first people early on in the Obama administration to get the BPI certification in our market, and I started looking for a job as an energy auditor while I was still in college. I was taking environmental engineering at the time, and basically got laughed out of HVAC companies, insulation companies, anything that I thought would be relevant to energy auditing. They all thought that at that time that it was going to be a fad, and that they didn't really have anything for that. So I ended up teaming up with a couple of other people, graphic designer and a couple friends of mine, and we started, got a website together, and I decided to try to go at it on my own. And then actually at the same time that I was doing, getting Cincinnati Energy Solutions, which was the name of the company, off the ground, the ARA funds hit in our area, and so we ended up having a lot of funding to do energy efficiency work in the area, and being the only company set up to do it. So it really took us to another level that way. As the ARA funds wound down in late 2014-ish, no, 2013 probably, I ended up selling the assets of that company to a local HVAC company that had saw some of the merits and benefits of home performance and wanted to be a part of it. And as I got integrated into their company, I saw that HVAC contractors have a piece that's missing from the home performance world in general, and that is the reoccurring revenue of maintenance agreements and actually already having a super most of the time a really good trust relationship with the community. They're the people that are called for the exact type of complaints that home performance tends to work best for. So after a couple years with that company, I saw that there was the way forward, I think, for home performance in this industry as a growth industry, and to be able to scale is through the HVAC industry and getting HVAC contractors trained to do the things that Rob's already been doing for years, looking at the house as a system, understanding the ductwork, and understanding the system, the HVAC system in relation to the rest of the house. And once they can do, just like many contractors across the country have proved, then they're going to be able to grow their businesses exponentially and also promote home performance as an industry while doing it.
Thanks, Jeremy. Let's go through some of the questions that I got set up for you guys so we can share some of your knowledge with some folks out there. So I'll leave you on the phone there, Jeremy, real quick. Can you kind of explain to a lot of folks, like I actually was an energy auditor, I guess still am, once you're an energy auditor, always an energy auditor, versus what is a home performance? Is there something that, you say that people are doing differently while they're in the house? Is there a different assessment? And I actually have, what do you guys do as a next slide? But I just want to know, can you kind of see if you can't separate home performance versus energy audit?
Typically, energy audit, in my mind, energy audit is a term that is used just for the process of the in-home process of evaluating the home itself and sort of understanding what's going on, maybe understanding what needs to be fixed in the home and what the order of that is, maybe what the paybacks for those different measures may be. Whereas home performance from a contracting side is actually being able to go back and after the energy auditor, who may be working for you or maybe a different party, depending on how you're running your business, has given the homeowners a comprehensive list of solutions and really got them to understand how they could benefit from that. Your company, as a home performance contractor, would be able to go back and fix any of those things that the energy auditor may have came up with. So even though I think that energy auditing is really a piece of home performance.
Rob, any comments on that?
No, I think he hit it right on the head.
All right, great. All right, Rob, I'm going to hit this with you. So can you describe, Rob, you have a bunch of guys that are doing this like regularly. Because let me ask, how many do you have on staff that are actually going to homes and doing assessments?
I have 11.
Great. That's I can't fathom trying to organize that or keep track of that, but you're doing very well at it. Can you kind of describe what is their typical evaluation? Let's just say they're coming out for a comfort issue in one of the rooms, but and what are you guys testing, or what are some of the things you guys always do when you're at a house? Can you kind of describe that process?
Sure. It varies. I mean, that's such a bland question that with being in the HVAC industry, most of the calls that we're getting is there's an HVAC problem. And like you said, because the room's cold, so my furnace is not working well, and you need to come out here and fix it because this room is cold or this room is hot and so forth. So we end up sending a service technician out there. All of our technicians are certified and do audits. So any service technician that's going out on any service call is aware of the home performance side of it and knows what to look for. And so when he goes out on that call for a service call, he's going to, listen to the customer's needs and wants and issues and concerns, and then do like a 15-20 minute walk around. And we have the little meters that go on the phone to measure airflow. He may measure the airflow that the room is the problem. He's going to poke his head into the attic and just kind of get a feel of the insulation levels, maybe see if he can see if any top plate's been sealed or and so forth. And if there's a crawl space, also kind of poke his head in there, maybe take a couple airflow measurements elsewhere if there's a room that's too hot versus the too cold. And then he'll go down to the unit and make sure that's performing. First of all, he's going to check static pressure on the ductwork. And 99% of the time, that's where the problem lies, is the ductwork is just, here in Maryland, it's horrible. 99.9% of the time, it's lacking return. And what he ends up selling is what we call a total energy solution audit, which is a combination of the home energy audit and an HVAC system audit, where we're going to do a room by room load calculation. We're going to take a flow hood, measure all the vents, supply and returns, static pressure, do electrical measurements, and everything else that comes with the home energy audit.
I got to ask the loaded question. Do you get a lot of, clients who are like, I don't want all that. I just want this room to not be cold anymore or to be hot anymore. So, but they're like, I don't need all that stuff. Do you get those kind of people fighting back, or do you feel that they really trust that, wow, I realize it's a larger issue than just being cold in this one room?
Well, I wish it was that simple. Again, it's a challenge each and every day, and it's a constant thing that we're learning every day, every week. Is, okay, I got hit with this question, I got hit with that question. Here's how I approached it, and then it's kind of like, how well did it go? And just trying to get over those hurdles. And we do the best that we can, where we have brochures, and the technician, of course, is going into more detail on this with the homeowner, and they go through sales training and making sure that we're asking all the right questions and not just telling the customer. And it's constantly asking. You can't just tell them this is what's going to solve the problem. Here's what this can do. Does that sound like a good idea? Does that sound like something you'd be interested in? And then sometimes the customers are like, yes, that would be something I'm interested in. I mean, the price is very inexpensive of what we charge to do it, as well as if they purchase any type of work, we're going to give that price will go towards it.
That's pretty impressive. One of your sales techniques is one of the things that I preach regularly, and that is to guide your client to let them discover the solution or their problem versus trying to tell them, because nobody wants to be really told what their bottom line is. So that's great. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I got one that I'll let either one of you kind of comment on. Let me explain what this is. So many of you may know Corbett Lunsford and his wife Grace has kind of joined their team. And one of the things that Corbett's a good friend. One of the things that Corbett did was he's kind of stopped playing with the industry and went right after homeowners, which is one of the things that a lot of people weren't really ready to do. But he was like, you know what? It's all about the homeowner. And he's really taken his entire effort to just working with homeowners, and he's had a really good success. He's been trying to get a television show for many years, and he shared with me the feedback that he got from many of these producers. He says, Corbett, you'll kill all of our other shows. And what they meant by that was there's all of these fix it up, do it right, tear it down, redo it shows that totally ignore home performance. They do not evaluate air sealing. They do not evaluate insulation. They just make it pretty. And they're like, Corbett, if we promote your show, all of our other shows will be devastated because they'll now have to reevaluate the home as how well it performs energy efficiency. So none of them will touch him in terms of promoting his show, which is a really, he does everything in this cool and sexy manner and really wants to do it. So he kind of got frustrated, but he's not given up. That's, he just keeps going at it. So I do want to promote his goal was, again, I'm going to just go to homeowners and let them know what's going on. So Corbett is going around the country. They build a little small house, the tiny house concept that people see out there. And he's actually running around with this 20-city tour. And you're welcome to go to website at the bottom to go see what he's doing, and he's getting some good turnouts and getting a lot of people to support his process, because homeowners show up and it's not about actually tiny houses, it's about all houses, and that he really wants to make sure people understand that your home should be performing and doing these things, and you should go hire somebody who knows what they're doing to help with you. So I was kind of shocked when I heard that his TV show was being crushed because it made all of their shows look bad. Jeremy, you got any feedback on that?
No, it's not surprising though that the mainstream industry. I mean, I've watched a ton of those shows, and outside of maybe one of them, none of them really focus on home performance much at all, if any. Every now and then you'll see some spray foam, you'll see somebody maybe talk about aeroseal sealing the ducts or something like that, but for the most part, he's 100% right. It's, granite countertops and things like that, and I think that it's probably going to stay that way for the foreseeable future, because what we do does not have that immediate appeal. Creating one of the things that I have a session coming up in the ACA conference here in March that's called Selling Home Performance by Creating an Emotional Connection. And a lot of times it's easy for homeowners to, create that emotional connection with things that they're going to see every day. But all the stuff that we do is behind the walls. So we have to be able to convey that emotional connection to the homeowners when we're in their home. And that is a little bit of a learning curve, a sales learning curve when it comes to home performance, that I think is always going to be there.
I'm sure you agree with that, Rob, yeah?
Oh, most definitely, because one of the big time persons that are out there that has a show that does spray foam, and I thought it was a good show, and the person happened to be at an ACA conference, and I went and asked him, why does he do a blower door test, because he's doing a lot of spray foaming in the house. So how does he know he didn't make it too tight? And he said, yeah. And I said, that's great. Would you mind showing 2 seconds of that on every episode? Because that's going to help homeowners understand what is that, and hopefully one day, they can grasp a hold of that. And then I also asked them about some HVAC testing and so forth, and he answered some of it. I got pushed to the curb a little bit though, because it is a concern, and I can understand why those producers are going to shove corporate out the door, because those shows are all over the place. They're popping up left and right. Every time you turn around, there's a new one coming out. And yeah, they're doing all cosmetic great things, and there's been so many people. I mean, I think there's a show out there now where they're just flipping houses, and they have no idea of how what a truss is, never been in an attic or anything like that, and it's just it's bad. It's really bad. Though they're getting ratings, and that's all they care about.
Well, I have faith that Corbett will find a way to get a show out. I think if nothing else, he's trying to find some low key or YouTube process, and eventually somebody's going to say, you know what, there is money behind that, and get behind him. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have learned from being in this industry and hanging around a bunch of home performance contractors is how they test ducts, which is quite different from many of the ways that energy auditors may test ducts. Many of them do not actually use a duct tester. In fact, I've been to conferences of home performance contractors, and they didn't actually know what a duct tester was. They're like, well, is that a mini blower door? So their concept of testing ducts is either with a power flow hood by itself or usually in tandem with a blower door. And I thought I would just share with our audience one of the ways that it's a common test. And this actually is acceptable in Kentucky as a way of doing code compliance. So the concept is that I'm going to set my blower door at the front. And I'm one who actually promotes if you're going to depressurize the blower door as you normally would, that it would be best if you had a powered flow hood based upon how they do a much better job of handling air that comes at them. That's always one of the challenges, is that is there any kind of turbulence, or are they actually handling the air that comes through? But you could use passive flow hoods. Many people do. The other one that's more common that I've seen out there is when they actually will pressurize the house, and the flow that moves through the hood is measured as their leakage. And you can go around, again, all the ducts are open, and I can go around and actually measure the differences between, one opening register or even a return. And this actually is really determining your leakage to outside is what that is. So I can go around, and if I have smoke or people can feel air moving through their grills, they have leakage. And I just want to know, is this something you guys did do, still do, or is this one of your ways of actually evaluating duct leakage, Rob?
Yes, that's exactly what we do.
You pressurize the house, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the duct blaster.
Okay, yeah. And I know why, because you told me about your training. The National Comfort Institute has a whole different philosophy about how to measure ducts. So I know that background and know Rob and those guys well. So yeah, and there's.
I just want to add too that this method here really allows you to involve the homeowner a lot more, which is we talk about that emotional connection. One of the ways to really let these homeowners see what's going on in their house is have them experience it. And with the duct blaster, it's sort of, you put the thing on, you cover the ducts, you get a number. Yeah, well, great. I mean, it's accurate and it's a good number, but it really doesn't do too much for the homeowner. And this way here, you can turn on the blower door and you can take your flow hood around and you can hand that flow hood to the homeowner, and you can say, every time you see a number come up on there, that's air getting into your ducts that shouldn't be there. And they can really relate to that, and it really stays in their mind as something that needs to be fixed versus just seeing a number pop up on a screen. So I actually really value, I didn't know anything about this method before I got into home performance in the HVAC industry. It is not used by or taught in any of the strict home performance fields as far as BPI and ResNet go. That is just not something that's taught. And so when I learned this, at first I was skeptical of it. So I had to prove it to myself that it comes out about the same as what you're going to get from the duct blaster or duct tester. But it's pretty darn accurate. And I'm surprised in Kentucky. I didn't know that they're letting it be used for code compliance, but that's a good thing because it is a valid method to testing ducts. And as far as selling home performance, it is an awesome tool to be able to use.
I know, Colin Gins, you're in the background. I know you feel this is also an amazing process. Do you have any comments, Colin? You're muted if you're still there.
Things to get this thing going. Yeah, well, I was in. You didn't actually introduce me much, but I've been involved in the home performance thing back for 25 years or so. Where the Comfort Institute was founded through Retrotec and then broke off as a separate company about 10 years ago. And one of the things that we discovered there is that if you're going to be doing a presentation to a homeowner, you need to get in there and show them something visual. And by pressurizing the house with a blower door and using a powered flow hood or just a regular flow hood, we could determine whether there was any duct leakage through outdoors. And as has been pointed out, duct leakage is probably the single biggest thing that you can fix in houses to the biggest bang for the buck. More recently, I've refined that process. Instead of using a flow hood or just using smoke on registers to see if there's duct leakage to the outdoors, I've used the powered flow hood that we have, the ASIN powered flow hood, and it's amazingly accurate at low flows, much more so than a passive hood because it doesn't affect the results at all. And what I've discovered is that you can not only measure duct leakage to outdoors in a house which has ducts that are outdoors, i.e. in the crawl space or in the attic, but you can also show duct leakage to outdoors in a house that has all the ducts inside the house. And in a house like that, you've got the part of the duct work that is often forgotten in, say, bedrooms, for example, is that the supply has to get back to the return, and since there's usually no return in the bedroom, it has to go underneath the door. So if the room itself, the master bedroom, say, is as leaky to the outdoors as the size of the hole into the door, the air coming out of the supplies will be split based on that leakage. So if you've got 80% of your leakage in the master bedroom is up the exhaust fan, through the pocket doors, and so on, then 80% of that supply is actually going to go outdoors. And this powered flow hood will show that. And I think that's probably the single biggest and most easy demonstration that you can make that works in almost every single house. And Joe's got a picture of it up there. So I think that was the piece of input you were wondering about.
Yeah, that's right. And you're right, Colin. I did not introduce you as earlier, and I kind of got distracted by not having my screen. But many people don't know that Cullen Ginge, before he founded Retrotec and made all these amazing devices, was one of the first and early home performance contractors. And Cullen can briefly elaborate that he actually went in with a whole home ventilation approach and was doing some of the things that are just now becoming more mainstream or more acceptable about having either a slight positive or a balanced ventilation assessment. So Cullen has really been involved in home performance for a long time. And as you mentioned, he helped found the Comfort Institute. And many of these techniques we're talking about were, the development of him and, the Comfort Institute. So can you elaborate on some of the stuff you did early in your career real quick, Cullen?
We were founded back in 1980, and at that point we made a decision that we wouldn't go after government money for state programs and so on, that we would go after the for-profit market, which was essentially going in and fixing houses that were existing already. So that particular market is a very different approach, is one where you need to have good-looking equipment. You need to not get all kind of bound up on a bunch of technical mumbo-jumbo. You need to learn how to communicate with the homeowner. And that has been our whole process from day one. It was essentially doing home performance from the standpoint of doing something that can make sense to the homeowner. And I know that shortly after that, I think several million energy audits were done in the U.S. And I don't think it resulted in more than a handful of work, mostly because it's just a bunch of technical mumbo-jumbo. And unless somebody comes along to translate that into something the homeowner can understand, they'll just be confused. They'll never want to buy anything. So I think that's what these two guys are doing. They're actually practicing that whole process of being able to relate this information to the homeowner in such a way that they'll recognize, yes, I have a problem, you understand what it is, and can you fix that? And they've been successful as a result. Anyway, that's on the spur of the moment. That's all I could think of.
Well, that was good, and it was brief, so I appreciate that. So thank you. So, yeah. I do want to point out, though, that this is the flow finder that Retrotec is a distributor in the US for. And many of you may have seen this at the shows. I know that Jeremy is dying to get his hands on one of these. You can actually breathe on this thing, and it will register the flow. It is just such a super accurate and low flow measurement device. And it'll go up to around 400 CFM. The higher range, it has even extrapolation mode. But for those of you that are really trying to do lower flows, this is the device to use. If you are going to use a passive flow hood, I have learned from many professionals, do not buy a cheap one, because you'll only be frustrated by, especially low flows that don't really register, or it's inconsistent, or it doesn't really understand how to take on higher flows in terms of what to do with the actual extra pressure or back pressure that shows up on those things. So if you want to get one, you're going to spend almost the same price as the flow finder. So make sure you're getting something that works well in the field. All right, I'm going to skip back through.
Sure. A quick comment on that, on the LBL study of passive flow hoods. They showed in a lot of circumstances, particularly when measuring returns in the same duct, the errors can easily be 40%. Whereas with this one, even in very touchy situations, the errors are still going to be within the 3% range. So it gives you a diagnostic tool that is unbelievable. The very first house that I used this on, I was able to detect an enormous imbalance between the crawl space and the main body of the house. And I said, look, you've got to open the door between the crawl space in your house until you get this fixed. And just opening that door and relieving that pressure imbalance was able to save them 25% a month on their energy bills. because the imbalance in the house was so bad. I think they had 250 CFM of return on the main floor and 700 CFM of supply. So essentially all the return is being sucked out of the crawl space. So I think that's an example of the kind of diagnostics you can do with a tool like this. It'll enable you to see things you'll never see in any other way. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you. Okay, let's get back to some questions here. So I'll start with Jeremy. So I'll give you the blower door and pressure pan as one unit. So if you had just one tool, if you could only go to your truck and get one thing out, which of these would you feel would be the best thing to use to do an evaluation of a home, Jeremy?
Well, 5 seconds ago I would have said the blower door and the pressure pan, but after hearing Colin describe the powered flow hood and the different things it could do, I'd have to say that that's pretty much a tie there. Sounds like you could do a pretty good duct evaluation with that powered flow hood without the blower door, but that still leaves the house to be answered for. So if that's coming as a kit, I'm going to have to say the blower door and the pressure pan.
Rob, how about your choice?
Just so that I understand the question correctly, is this just for home performance testing, or is this home performance and HVAC testing?
I'll let you answer that. How about that? So why don't you give me both? Like if I'm going to do home performance, I would use this. And I know where you're probably going to go with the HVAC. So go ahead and give me both.
Well, yeah, home performance, exactly what Jeremy said, blower door pressure pan, and of course HVAC is, one of the flow hoods. I'm dying to get a powered flow hood. I just had my savings bank is filling up some, so hopefully soon.
Well, I can't tell you that the price was reduced $1,000 from what it was a year ago. So the power flow hood is now actually cheaper than the one really good passive flow hood that's out there. So almost by $800 or $900 less than the really good passive flow hood that you normally should buy. So I'm surprised you didn't pick the gauge to do static pressure in terms of your assessment. You want to comment on? Do you think if I really want to focus on one, is static pressure versus the flow out of the registers something you would actually place more emphasis on? Rob?
Well, the reason why I said the flow hood is going back. What has been common in this whole webinar is customers, and that gauge. If I'm standing there with a customer, they're going to look like a deer in headlights. So if I'm there with the power flow hood, it's going to be much easier to explain.
Excellent. So I think you guys really have hit something that I didn't actually come into this remembering or being aware of, and that is that you must get your customers emotionally involved, like Jeremy said. And you must have tools to do that. So I know if you have an IR camera, I highly encourage you to get one of the FLIRs. I don't think the Fluke has it, but they actually have a thing where you work on your iPad, so your clients can see it while you have the camera, and it's really a very emotional attachment that they can actually see what you're talking about with both of you not bonking your heads trying to look at the camera. So the emotional attachment is really becoming one of the themes of our webinar, so that's great. I do want to make a promo here because this actually has been a modification that happened recently at Retrotec that this actually was almost an exclusive for Comfort Institute, and not many people were aware of the hard panel that's out there. And this is an engineering marvel, and it was just recently modified so it'll work with any of the blower door fans that Retrotec sells. Prior to that, you had to have one of the older style fans that was a much heavier fan and much larger connection, and it kind of slid into place. And now they've actually re-engineered this so that it'll work with the older fans or the newer fans. So you can actually use it with the 1000 or the new 5000 fan. And the picture I found on the right actually comes from DOE. So again, these are actually one of the things that people found was a quick way to set up, and it was really impressive for their clients to see zip, zip, zip. Okay, I got my blower door, and it really is a professional setup. So if you're interested in that, somebody at Retrotec can give you more information, but many people didn't realize that Retrotec had this hard panel and how amazing it is to set up to do these performances.
Hey, Joe, one of the reasons why the home performance contractors liked these was that it's set up fast, but more importantly, when I talked to them about it and I asked them about using a clock door and how people reacted to it, they said they just bored and they walked away. Whereas when people were when the contractor or the evaluator was setting up the hard panels, everybody would gather around because it was such a fascinating process. It just like, seemed to go up almost by magic, and sometimes the whole family would be sitting there watching them set it up. So there is a difference in terms of the appearance, for sure, and the performance is pretty much the same, but it's really looking professional, which is what this is all about.
Rob,
And
you've been doing
somehow,
this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and somehow the cloth door panel, which was never sold through the Comfort Institute, hardly at all. Like I think only about 2% of them ever bought them. Just doesn't have that kind of excitement about it.
Rob, do you have these, or do you have the cloth panels?
We have both. We have two of the hard panels, and if I'm going out, I'm using hard all day long. I love it.
Great, and you know that you can now get just the bottom piece. I'll put my mouse over. You can just get a new bottom section that now works with the newer fans. So if you're thinking about upgrading fans, you can just get the new bottom and keep the upper two sections.
Yeah, Joe, I wanted to mention too, while we're all talking about the hard panel, this is Jay West. I worked in weatherization in the busiest weatherization company at CETA Weatherization in Chicago. I did thousands of blower doors, literally. And another thing about this that's different from the cloth is that you don't need as much room to set it up. So especially if you're working in existing rooms where there's just not a whole lot of space in a foyer, or there's stuff set up, or even you can see on your picture there that there's a chandelier hanging over. Sometimes those are low and you accidentally hit those with the frame when you're trying to move around. That's another really big benefit of having a modular frame, is that you don't need as much room to put it up, to install it.
Thank you. All right, so let's keep moving. Okay, so here's one. I know Jeremy's take on this, and I'll explain one of the reasons why. Is that Jeremy and I do a presentation that talks about the manual J and why it should be including the blower door. So I talked to many HVAC contractors, and I'm like, hey, how many of you do a manual J? Well, sometimes, depends. Not always for replacements. I say, do you guys have a blower door? They go, oh, yeah, we have a blower door. Do you use a blower door to do your manual J? Oh, no. And one of the things that happened a little over a year ago is that the infiltration, which can be sometimes 30 to 40% of the requirement for the HVAC system, especially in the northern climates, is based upon infiltration, which really should be based on the actual infiltration of the blower door. So Jeremy and I have a presentation, and we've done some case studies based upon Jeremy's stuff he's did in Cincinnati to show just the impact of if I just use presets in manual J versus actually doing a real blower door and showing the real infiltration. Sometimes they're twice as much as what the actual software will estimate. So we highly encourage you guys to use your blower door and input that stuff into your manual J, depending on what type of software. They both allow you to do that. So, that kind of give a quick overview. Jeremy, do you want to explain how you use the manual J? Because I think if you do a good manual J, it's just like doing a ResNet calculation, because you do so much in terms of, the windows, the doors, the ceiling. So can you kind of comment on why the manual J is such an amazing energy audit software?
Yeah, I tell people that are getting, we have a lot of people in this industry right now that are just getting exposed to manual J, that have been maybe doing HERS ratings for a long time, or doing energy audits and things like that. And a lot of people, are intimidated by the word manual J for some reason, but they don't realize that they've been doing manual J's probably their whole career, because every single thing that we look at and are taught to look at as HERS raters and energy auditors through BPI are components of what goes into the manual J heat load calculation to determine the heating and cooling load of the home. And so for a long time, infiltration was always estimated, and as Joe just talked about a little bit, now you can put an actual number in there. Obviously, that's not going to be relevant if we're doing these for new construction, but talking about home performance in particular, now you can have, and I'm more familiar with the Right Salt software than I am the Elite, but I'm sure they both have similar functions. But in terms of the Right Salt software, it has nice graphic features that will actually let you show the impact of each one of the elements on the heating and cooling load in the home. And so this is a wonderful tool to be able to show the homeowner where home performance upgrades can come into actually lessening their heating and cooling load and play into the type of system that they actually need to be put in the house, or the value of sealing the ducts, or upgrading insulation, or lessening the infiltration, which becomes very apparent when you look at the graph that the manual J calculation puts out for you.
So one of the questions I have, which I'll throw back to you, Rob, is that you said you did a lot of things in the home. On that list you kind of rattled off on, evaluating the electrical load and a bunch of other stuff with a full evaluation of the HVAC system in the house. So my first question is, do you guys always do a manual J as part of that assessment that you're given to the homeowners?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, we do a manual J on every job we're quoting the new system on, as well as the total energy solution audit. And the total energy solution audit is doing the room by room load calculation versus a block load, which is pretty much, your energy auditor load type of feel, where you're just drawing the perimeter and then throwing the windows up and so forth. You're not getting what each room is actually needed. I mean, I use RightSoft as well, and it's an amazing tool. I mean, there's so much to it that it takes years to learn all of it, manual J. I mean, it just does so much.
But it does have some, being a novice at it, it does have some features that allow you to be a learner and grow into it. So I actually have done several evaluations myself, and we're not able to touch any of the full benefits of it, but still was able to kind of get some ideas about infiltration versus other parts of the house. So I wouldn't want to intimidate anybody, but let you know that it's out there, and there is a free version, I think, for a month or something. So something to look into.
Yeah, Joe, I wanted to add, is the infiltration in, if they go with RightSoft, I don't know much about Elite, is that it's hidden. It's not out there like you have here on the picture, because all that stuff is right out there when you go to it. Infiltration's hidden. I've done many seminars and doing many this year as well on this whole topic, is because most HVAC contractors didn't even know that they can even change it, and much less how to change it, because it comes default as what they call is simplified, and they have 4 choices, and it comes defaulted to average, which is your standard air changes that the house needs to be. And then you got the choices of tight, semi-tight, semi-loose, and loose, and then you can change it to blower door, and then you can enter in your blower door reading, whether it's a single point or multi-point. So unless you really know the software, it can be a challenge. Again, that's going into the details of instructions or getting help from them. Their support is fantastic, and just knowing where to go to enter all that is the key to that part.
I did a webinar on this quite a while ago after Jeremy and I did a presentation at ACA. So we do have something up on the Retrotec YouTube site. So maybe Jay can dig it up in the background, but you can go find it. And it does talk about how to find those fields and how to enter that and what are some of the differences. I do want to ask you, Rob, is that assessment you just described where you're doing the room to room and all those, what's that cost an average homeowner? I'm sure that's a common question that's popping up every now and then is, it's a huge benefit for the homeowner. What's the cost?
$395 for one system.
That is a deal. Wow. Most people do an energy audit for that, and it's just a blower door and IR. So that's impressive.
It's that lost leader thing.
Yes, indeed. In fact, somebody else wanted to find out is what else does Minnicks do besides HVAC? Are you guys also doing insulation? Are there other upgrades that are sometimes part of the home performance model? Do you guys do other stuff?
Yes, we do insulation, plumbing, electrical. pretty much anything that you need, and if we can't do it, I have subcontractor agreements with contractors, and that was the whole part of when we got into home performance. You know, I'm in front of the customer, and I'm sure most people get this a lot, is, okay, now who does this and who should I call? So I created, you know, a list of the contractors that we didn't do anything internally if they needed something done, and we built that relationship. And over time, depending on how you feel in the subcontractor, a lot of times we just become the general contractor because the customer has built the trust with us, and we need to be there throughout, and they don't want to be dealing with anything. And so it just works out better in the long run, and it takes away a lot of the phone calls and complaints that the customer has when you kind of step away from it and pass it off, is what we found here.
Yeah, that's an amazing success. I've heard that story from other HVAC contractors or similars, and they say, we don't describe ourselves as home performance. We tell the homeowner, we'll solve your problems no matter what it is. So if they say the receptacle in the kitchen doesn't work, if he doesn't have an electrician in his staff, he will make sure he has somebody he always works with, and he says, what time can they come by tomorrow and fix that? So it is this, they always keep coming back to him as a trusted resource to have stuff solved, even though it has nothing to do with their original business model. So I think that's a great way to approach making the homeowner feel as though you're the trusted source. So nice job.
Thank you.
Hey, Joe, I just wanted to piggyback off that real quick, what you just said, too, about the whole home performance terminology. I hear a lot of people, particularly from the HVAC world, get hung up on, I don't want to tell people that I do home performance because they don't know what it is. That's a very valid point, because people don't know what it is, but at the same time, as you just pointed out, we really don't want to be selling that particular term. We can refer to ourselves in the industry as home performance contracting, but what we want to do is be able to connect with the homeowners and really help them solve the issues in their home. And that's the same stuff that, you know, HVAC and home performance has been doing for years. So there's no need to try to put that sort of home performance spin on it in your marketing and when you're talking to homeowners, because you're just going to confuse them. We just want to be able to hear from them what it is that's causing them grief, feel their pain, so to speak, and then try to fix that instead of fixating on home performance all the time.
Great point, Jeremy. Well done. Okay, so this is a loaded question, and I'm going to have Jeremy answer this first, because I know the answer probably from Rob for the most part, but can you do home performance without being the HVAC contractor, Jeremy? Do you think this is possible, or you have to have somebody that's your buddy?
The answer to that is, yeah, you can be in a home performance contractor without being an HVAC contractor, but you can't do home performance without including HVAC in it. So, you know, there's a lot of obstacles to overcome that the rest of home performance doesn't have to actually be able to be an HVAC contractor and do it well. And a lot of that is experience, a lot of that is licensing. There's all kinds of different things that go into that you don't have in a lot of the other fields in home performance. So it's okay to not do that in-house and have a relationship with the HVAC contractor that is going to be able to service you and understand what you're trying to accomplish and do the work the way that you prescribe it. But you definitely cannot be an HVAC or a home performance contractor without understanding and looking at the HVAC system. So, you know, at that point, you're just an insulator, or you're just whatever, a guy with an infrared camera, because you're not looking at the whole house, because the HVAC system is such a huge part of it. So, yeah, like you said, it's a loaded question. Can you do it without being an HVAC contractor? Sure. Can you do it without knowing and understanding the HVAC system and the ductwork and things like that? Absolutely not. So there's the difference in my mind.
That's a very good answer. I'm going to modify this for you, Rob. That HVAC contractor, since you've been growing up in the industry, you must have seen just an enormous amount of changes that an average person probably could have learned the system in maybe a couple of weeks or a month. But now the training and the specialized electronics and the specialized even thermostats are really a significant learning curve. Do you feel that that's just something you always have to stay on top of, or how do you keep track of your guys being up to date with some of these systems?
No, you're exactly right. The analogy I like to use is the HVAC equipment years ago were like teenagers. Don't tell me what to do. I'm going to keep running. You can shove anything in the ductwork. It doesn't matter how well the house is performing. I'm just going to keep running like a teenager. They don't listen to you. They're just going to keep going. The newer systems now, for them to be so energy efficient and with all the great things that the new equipment can do, they're like a toddler. And we see that in new cars, and they're like toddlers. Every time some little thing goes wrong, they're crying out for help. And so they're going to shut down. They're going to throw an alert to your cell phone on a thermostat and keep crying to you till you get somebody to help them. And with the equipment nowadays, especially with the static pressure, yeah, the motors can ramp up. And I've heard so many home performance people and other HVAC contractors say, well, you know, with the variable speed, everything's going to ramp up, and that's going to solve every airflow problem that you have. And that, to me, is false. And there again, if it's going to ramp up, what else is going to ramp up? The electric. So I thought our whole thing was to reduce the electric. So let's find the source, and then we can get this system to perform the way it needs to. It gets to be a challenge, and especially with this high-end equipment. We need to make sure that we're designing it properly to deliver what we promise.
Great, excellent information. It's been a major resource for myself and a lot of other folks, I'm sure, on here, and it is being recorded. So for those of you that are staying with us, we really appreciate that. I'm probably going to try and wrap it up in about 5-6 minutes. If you need to go, you still get your credits if you don't want to stick around, but I can guarantee you that there will be some really good information to keep coming. So let's keep moving with a few more of those. Instead of the do's, can you guys share with like one don't? Like, you know, we learned when we go into houses, this is something that we don't do. Rob, you want to go first?
I know back in the day, you know, we talked about manual J's, and there was I remember going out as a kid, and I would ask the sales guy, I'm like, okay, how are you sizing this house to make sure it's the right unit? And he'd stand on the curb and hold up his fingers, and however many fingers it took to cover the house is what size unit it needed. Don't do that.
Okay. They used to have little cutouts of the house that you could hold at arm's length. That's right. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I think what you're really saying is don't make the assumptions of square footage or things like that anymore either, because those are what put us in the problems that we have. So we may have got past the finger rule, but people still use this square footage per ton concept, and I think that still is the next phase that people haven't really got away from either. So.
No, you're exactly right. It's the rule of thumb is, to me, you know, as corporate says, proof is possible. Is show me the data. Show me how you came up with this instead of just because I know.
Yeah, Jeremy,
the problem there is when they put in larger units than they should be, particularly in a retrofit situation. They usually don't wind up delivering any more cooling or heating anyway because they are short cycling, and often if they were to put the right size unit in or an even smaller size unit, they might get more total energy delivered out of it.
Well said, Colin. Jeremy, what's one of your greatest failures you've learned the hard way?
Well, I'd have to say don't walk into a home and hand a homeowner a laundry list of things that they need to fix without really understanding what they want out of it first. Because as energy auditors, as HVAC contractors, as guys that are technical and understand a bunch of stuff, it's easy for us to go into a house and go hog wild and diagnose and measure everything and produce all these great numbers and want to show them all this stuff and totally overlook why you're there in the first place. So for me, the biggest thing is just don't go in assuming that you're just going to go in there and hand somebody a list of upgrades and then walk out, and that's going to be the end of the day, because we really need to understand from the homeowner what it is that they value and what they want, and be able to tailor our solutions around that.
Yeah, a lot of great information here today. This is awesome. I think that I have two questions that I feel that you guys kind of have done a good job of already explaining, and you just did again about, things that are there. But one of the ones, I'll see, Rob, so they say, oh, I have this one problem here, and you realize that, wow, you've got bigger problems with the unit or something else. How do you get your clients to give it a balance as to what they think is the issue, and they're not that knowledgeable, versus your guys come out and say, wow, we really have this other issue that we need to assess. I'm assuming that with great data and great care, you kind of can overcome that. How do you summarize a simple balance to what they want versus what their real issue is?
Well, it's always about asking good questions and asking them, okay, I can take care of this issue. Do you mind if I ask you a few other questions? And from the walk around, I probably found some issues or concerns, and I'm going to ask about those questions. One of the questions that seems to work really well with me, I ask, is there any other rooms that are a comfort issue? And they say, no, it's just this one room. I'm like, okay, one more question. If I put a thermometer in each room, would they all be within 3 degrees? And he said, no way. And I say, okay, well, that's why I want to test to make sure, because our guarantee is that once we're done, all the rooms are going to be within 3 degrees. Would that make you happy?
Well said. And yeah, it sounds like you guys have really got a great job of having a good experience, and you keep learning from your techs in the field on how to communicate with clients. So, Jeremy, I'm going to give you this one, which is one of the most common challenges no matter what you do, whether you're selling, windows, doors, cars, or whatever. So how do you overcome the price? Or I know one of the things people are doing now is kind of staged installations. So you're not hitting them with a $18,000 bill, but let's talk about, this is a great first step. Maybe later in the year we can do this. But a lot of them are like, wow, that's more money than I expected. I was hoping for a $400 bill, and you've got me down for, $3,000 of home improvement.
Well, one thing that I'm a and I am from talking to Rob on other occasions, and that he is too, is actually trying to pre-qualify people's budget. You can't be scared to talk about it. Money's going to be spent to fix this stuff. I mean, we know that, they know that, you wouldn't be there otherwise. So one of the things that I really advocate is understanding the budget up front. And that's a simple conversation that you can have with somebody at various stages in your sales process, which is, well, so what is the budget that you have for this project? What budget do you have in mind? Or, is there any constraints that we should be worried about as I formulate the solution for your problem? That way we know up front what the homeowner is wanting to spend, and it gets that elephant out of the room, because, as well as I do, that these upgrades can add up quickly, and if you're just never talking about the price from the time you walk in the door, and then you slap some big ticket item on somebody, they're going to have sticker shock, and you might walk out of there and never get a call from those people again. So it's really important to be able to understand their budget as much as it is to understand what it is they're trying to solve, And I've heard all kinds, some people will be very upfront, we've got $3,000 in savings, this is what we're working with. That's great. Then I can start thinking about what we can do with that $3,000 to fix their problem. Or, I have clients that'll say, I'm not worried about the money, I just want this fixed. Okay, then for sure that that person is somebody that you're going to be able to fix the problem, and according to them, they're going to be able to pay for it. So that budget conversation to me is just a very important piece to overcoming price, because then it's not an issue. You've already addressed it in the front of the conversation.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is don't be some people are afraid to talk about money or the costs until the end, And as you kind of point out that you've already lost them if that's the way you're going to handle it. That if you're not upfront about what their budget is, or also sharing with them, we've worked with homeowners like yourself to fix these, and sometimes these things can range between $2,000 to $4,000. Is that something that you're able to to budget for, or can we actually fix that? And if they're like, no, we have nowhere near that kind of money, then you've already assessed it and be like, okay, well, let's see what we can do, and you've reworked it to a kind of a stage process. So, nice job of handling the price thing. I think this is one of my last questions, because IAQ and healthy homes are one of the next things that's kind of I think fading green out. Green is kind of everywhere, but healthy living, healthy homes is beginning to overcome the market in terms of things you see on the shelf, things you see in your house. Products you're buying are no longer green; they're now called healthy living, healthy products. So, is this something you guys are beginning to include in your conversations or your business model, Rob?
Well, apparently you didn't look at my logo long enough.
I guess not. Oh yeah, it's on the bottom. That's right, it is. Sorry. Well, not to be
It's on the top.
not to be like blunt, but some people say they do that stuff.
Right. No.
Right. Yes.
It's definitely something that we are. 2016, matter of fact, is our complete focus. I have a really large presentation to do that, where I divide it all up, and depending on where I need to go and talk about it, because I'm setting up to talk with a lot of homeowner associations, real estate companies, and so forth, and a lot of support. And it's ironic, Larry Zarker and I have been talking about this for several years, and then the article that he had out last July 2015 in the Remodeling magazine on healthy homes, in the study that New Zealand did. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I did read over that, and Colin's actually from New Zealand.
Yeah, which is, it's unbelievable, and I totally believe, them finding that, is that so many people are having some health concerns, and asthma and allergies are, just growing. And matter of fact, I'm involved with a 24-home case study with children that have asthma in their homes, and I'm partnered up with a doctor and an energy auditor of where we're going into these homes and finding out what the issues are and seeing if we can make it better and see if it has changed the results with the children that have asthma. Because there's so much money that's being spent. I mean, as we know with the healthcare problem that we have here, and the prescriptions, the money, and just the time alone. I mean, people don't really realize the value of their time spent going to the doctors, taking off work, all the missed time that is missed because they're taking care of all these health issues. So many people do not take that in consideration, and it's to me, it's huge.
So I can give you an update from the BPI world. Is that I'm on their committee, and Jay and I actually were out writing test questions for a new credential. It's an add-on to the BA or the Energy Auditor, which is called Healthy Home Evaluator, and it's designed exactly for what you're doing, is to try to train people and give them the credentials to go into a home and actually assess a healthy home and healthy living. And one of the things that actually brought all this together, and it probably was in Larry Zarker, the CEO of BPI's article, was the Affordable Care Act, that the healthcare program that the U.S. adopted had changed one of its models, which is allow a doctor to say, oh, we should get somebody into your house to evaluate what kind of issues you're having, and that he can actually directly kind of go to this healthy home evaluator, and they could be somebody that's directly involved with evaluating the home. So I think that that's going to become a much larger market in terms of evaluating the conditions. And once the insurance company catches on to this, it'll be a new era in terms of trying to be more preventative with the conditions in your house. So, Jeremy, is that something you're including in part of your homeowner dialogue?
It definitely is. And the one thing that I caution everybody about with the IAQ industry is we have to be careful what claims we make as professionals about what we can achieve in homes, because we know as energy professionals and home care professionals that the things that we can affect in a home and how much better that we can make it. But I think the people, with all the push towards the indoor air quality issues and healthy home and healthy living, we never want to tell people that we solve IAQ issues. We can affect IAQ issues, and we can more than likely make them better with the things that we understand in the home. But there are outside factors, and many of them, that affect the allergies and things that people experience from indoor air quality. So to claim that we fix those problems could end up in some serious issues for this industry down the road. So as much as I'm like, yes, we need to embrace this and get into it, we also just need to be careful how we're phrasing things as we move forward.
Well, one of the things that I'm an IAQ professional. One of the things that is there's an entire industry of lawyers that just leap on IAQ claims. So you can go to a house and say, I'm going to reduce your energy bill by 10%, and if you don't, it's rare that you probably get sued. But if you say, I'm going to make your home, you breathe so much better and your asthma go away, you have a high priority of getting sued, because those people are all over those. So that's a great way to remind people to stay within your limits, because your E&O will not be able to protect you from those kind of lawyers. A few other comments left. I think that was my last question for you guys. I do have some resources. I know that Jeremy is on this site. I know Cullen Ginge is on this site regularly, and Rob is. That if you're really looking for some phenomenal resources, or if you have a question that didn't make sense, or you want to learn more about it, if you're not familiar with the LinkedIn group, the ResNet BPI group, I highly recommend you join this group, whether or not you like LinkedIn or not. This is one place to go get a huge amount of dialogue and information from the people that live it and breathe it all the time. And it's rare to just get one or two replies. You usually get a whole page of people that are trying to give you some great information. I did mention Comfort Institute a few minutes ago, and many of the people that are on this call may be members of that. There's a lot of people maybe Dr. Energy Saver members. Those are two of the most common, I would call them marketing support and training groups that are out there. The Comfort Institute was recently restructured to work with AeroSeal, but I talked with one of their their leading trainers, and they're still going, they're still out there, and we regularly work with Dr. Energy Saver. So if you're looking for a business model, these are the kind of folks that are out there to help you be successful at what you're doing. Someone asked about the National Institute, and it's a slightly different process of how they evaluate ducts and how they evaluate the HVAC system. So they are also a group that's out there. They're kind of anti-duct tester, so I love them. I go to all their sessions when I can. They're very informative, but they don't always fit with what Retrotec and I are trying to promote. So there's many different fish in the ocean, as I'll describe it. Cullen, do you want to give us a summary or anything you want to do in terms of Retrotec is a major supporter of home performance. You want to try to iterate what your philosophy is behind that?
Well, there's a couple of notes I wrote down as you were talking. One was when you were talking about duct testers and the National Comfort Institute not recommending them. A duct tester is a great compliance tool, or a tool that you would use to find leaks and track them down when you're doing the job, but I don't think it's a good diagnostic tool. By diagnostic tool, I mean going in, doing some kind of evaluation, which is like there's a sales evaluation where you're actually trying to get the job, and then there's like a complete energy audit where you may spend a couple hours there, looking at all kinds of detail. But the sales audit, or the sales call, as I understand it, you're going to get in there and take a quick look at what's going on, and you're not going to be able to do a complete evaluation most of the time, but I'm sure that the approaches vary there. On the front of, or on the question of if there was one tool I would have, apart from a flow finder, would probably be just a smoke puffer. So I've had a number of instances where I've gone into people's houses, I've turned on the air handler, and in one case I put a bit of smoke underneath the doorway, and I said, wow, look at this. Look at all the air that's coming from your garage. Do you ever idle your car in the garage? And he said, yeah, my husband idles the car in the garage every morning. I was wondering how that exhaust got into the house. And they immediately asked us if we could fix that. And so they're asking us immediately for a job based on a demonstration. We would regularly demonstrate when the air handler is running depressurization in the main body of the house by closing the bedroom doors. Look at the sliding door. You say, oh, I guess you probably cleaned this up last week and it's dirty again. And they say, yep, I can't figure out how that gets dirty all the time. You put some smoke down there. You show them how the dirt's coming into the house. You show them the air's coming in through the attic, through the crawl space, down the chimney, and so on. It's a great diagnostic tool and one that shouldn't be forgotten. So that was pretty much all I had to add.
So I want you to kind of send us off with why you've been very passionate about home performance, and why you think that's something that you've dedicated an enormous amount of your career and equipment to helping others. So I was wondering if you kind of could share why this is a personal situation for you.
Well, because houses perform so badly. I haven't sold a lot of home performance myself. I've done analysis, maybe 100 or so houses, and I bet you in 20 minutes I could find serious problems in almost any house in America, particularly in a certain area that you get used to the houses and you can just go straight to the problems, and the houses are all kind of built more or less the same way. So once you get used to houses built by a certain builder in a certain neighborhood, you pretty much know what kind of horrible things you're going to find out. You don't have to take the whole house apart to figure it out. In fact, in our training courses, what we used to do is we'd go to a new home construction site and we'd walk around when the house was in the framing state, and we'd show them the problems that were about to be built into that house that they would probably have to come back 5 years later to fix. But it's horribly expensive to fix these houses after the fact. So a big promotion that we have right now is called the Compliance Project, where we're trying to get houses to comply to codes, at least to have them performance tested in terms of ducts, house leakage, and so on. And the cost of doing this is ridiculously cheap. There's a group out there that I think they call themselves the Ring 4 Club or something. All these houses the duct leakages are below 10 CFM. And even in Maryland, which is the tightest duct leakage requirement in the country, which is 4 CFM per 100 square feet, so about 80 CFM, these guys are 8 times tighter than that. And there's no reason why we can't do this. It's like a huge bang for the buck. And the whole home performance industry is going back and fixing stuff that should have been done when the house was built in the first place. And it's pathetic, really.
Okay, on that note, I want to thank Jeremy. Jeremy is actually in the middle of an assessment today and pulled over and is in a parking lot. And he's been able to be on our webinar today and went out of his way to make sure that he was able to be here. So I appreciate that effort. And Rob, your information and all you've done for the industry are so valuable. So I want to thank both of you. We definitely will do something with you guys again, because I felt this is one of the best webinars we've actually put on in terms of the information we got from real people in the world and some other techniques. So I can't thank you enough. So we will, if anybody has any questions, you can throw those out real quick, and I'll make sure Rob or Jeremy gets those, and we'll get some response back. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off now, and want to tell everybody thank you. We look forward to seeing you next week for one of our webinars, or the following, or at ResNet. And we do a couple a month, so please make sure you are signed up or keep track of what we're doing on YouTube. Thanks again, everybody.